This November, Wisconsin voters will decide a question that could reshape the governor's power. You'll have a constitutional amendment on your ballot. Wisconsin State Capitol Bureau Chief Vanessa Kelson explains.
Wisconsin governors have long used what's known as the Vanna White veto, striking letters or words from legislation to change its meaning, similar to the letter revealer from the Wheel of Fortune. This constitutional amendment on your November ballot will determine whether or not governors have the power to use a partial veto to increase taxes or fees.
No governor, Republican or Democrat, should be able to raise taxes on Wisconsin families with the stroke of a pen.
On Thursday, the Wisconsin State Assembly passed the resolution to send the question about executive power straight to voters.
There are 54 ayes and 41 noes.
The resolution, passing without Democratic support, is in response to Governor Evers' 400-year veto, which enabled school districts to raise property taxes for the next 4 centuries to fund their schools.
It's worth stepping back and marveling at the veto power that governors have in Wisconsin and being aware that not all governors have that level of power.
UW-La Crosse Associate Professor Anthony Trugoski explains Wisconsin governors from Tommy Thompson to Evers have used partial vetoes.
In the current era of divided government, we have seen Governor Evers use the partial veto much more aggressively because he is contending with a party in the legislature that has often been at odds with his particular policy objectives.
Governor Evers' office did not respond to a request for comment. If this legislation passes, it won't impact Governor Evers. However, it will be in effect for whoever the next governor of Wisconsin will be. From the Wisconsin State Capitol, Vanessa Kelson.